Hello and welcome back. And that's right, look out the window. Now look at the calendar. That's right, it's August 2026. And SanDisk has decided that now is the time to launch a new range of NAS-focused SSDs. And I know what you're thinking, who on earth, at a time when SSDs are not only incredibly unaffordable, but also in some cases incredibly unavailable, who would approach this industry right now and roll out an SSD specifically targeted to systems that generally need multiple of these drives at any given time, whether it is for general storage, whether it is for tiering, whether it is for simple caching or an OS drive on a 24/7 system. There is still a demand for SSDs in NAS, even when the price of SSD in general has skyrocketed. So I can kind of see the logic. And in the second half of this video, we will cover another reason why SanDisk are looking at this right now. But until we get to that, let's talk about the drives themselves. Arriving in a SATA variation and a Gen 5 M.2 variation. If we start with the SATA series first, that is the 600 series. Now it's going to be arriving in 500 gig, 1 TB, 2 TB and 4 TB. These are fairly standard SATA SSDs, arriving with 560 meg sequential read, 512 megabyte sequential write. Obviously the smaller capacity is a little bit below that. These are DRAM-less, but at SATA that is a lot more common than you think. And the durability is rated, I always go by drive writes per day, at 0.329 drive writes per day. So fairly standard stuff. And power consumption of at the lower end 1 watt up to around 4 watt at the larger capacity during sequential write operations. So the SATA drives are actually pretty standard. But as I say, the M.2 NVMe variation is quite intriguing. Being a Gen 5 x 4 speed SSD, these are high performance drives. Now these arrived, the 800 series, with a sequential reported maximum read of 14,900 megabytes per second and sequential write up to 13,200. The lower end drive sitting at around 11,000 or 11 gigabytes per second, depending on your maths. Now these do arrive with DRAM, because I was really worried that these drives were going to be the sort of drives that we've seen recently from the likes of Samsung, where the majority of the newer generation, if not consumer grade, then certainly commercial grade drives have all been arriving without DRAM to save a bit of money. And if it came to certain write instances like write caching, the idea of relying on host memory buffer, I would have had my problems with, particularly with the cost of RAM these days. So these do have DRAM on board. Also the durability very good, rated at 1 drive write per day, or 0.999 to presumably infinity, with the drive starting at 1 terabyte and going all the way up to 7.6 terabytes. They've got that little bit of over provisioning on every single drive. That's why you don't see the fixed 500 1 TB, 2 TB, etc. Power consumption, understandably, at Gen 5 has ramped things up, starting at 6 watts and going up to a maximum 7 watts or so during sequential write operations. So I would argue the SATA ones are probably going to be more intriguing to most users currently, because there aren't that many Gen 5 M.2 NAS solutions outside of enterprise and flash fabric, that sort of thing. But there will be demand that way, so clearly they're future-proofing a little bit. But I can already hear a number of you going, wait a minute, SanDisk, WD, doesn't WD already have a big old pile of NAS SSDs under their belt? And you're right, there was the SA500 series, the WD Red SATA drives, and SATA, and of course there was their SN700 series of M.2 NVMe SSDs for NAS. So what the hell happened? Well, the split happened. For those that weren't following, you may have skipped over the fact that although for the longest time, I say the longest time, it was about 5 years, WD acquired SanDisk for $19 million quite a number of years ago. When it got to the early 2020s, there was grumblings about just what exactly this merger had achieved. And thanks to Elliott Investment Management, that was a shareholder, they basically wrote an open letter that said this merger was a bad idea. Both component parts of this acquisition, WD and SanDisk, had lost out. And then during early 2025, there was effectively a split between the two across two different organisations. The result being that by splitting them apart, they could focus on their areas and the acquisition wouldn't have been such a crazy thing. Now, the result of that is that all of the drives that are WD SSD, we've already been seeing for more than a year now, slow retirement, not just on NAS drives when it is the blue series from WD. Some of the black series SSDs, we've slowly seen WD start to roll things back. Now, not all ranges have been impacted. A number of the, the Gen 4 SSDs that were heavily utilised in PlayStation still remain on the scene, but even they are slowly getting retired. And this move to have SanDisk's own NAS drives is effectively to replace the status quo. So right now, if you do Google WD Red SSDs, you'll find listings, but very, very few results on those searches will be official pages, and the ones that are will be legacy or just going to some download repository. And the remaining WD drives that are for sale on official sites, the majority of them are on SanDisk sites. You can still find WD SSDs being sold on SanDisk sites, and it won't be that much longer before SanDisk SSDs become the status quo. So right now, if you are looking at buying SSDs for your NAS, and particularly high durability SSDs, and you're already considering the WD Red drives, then I would strongly recommend looking at these drives when they arrive. I believe the launch is, well, now. I will try and get hold of some here for the channel so we can do some reviewing and to see how they stand up to some sustained utilisation. But for now, what do you think? Do you think this is a bit tone deaf by SanDisk, or is this just SanDisk being SanDisk, looking at the market and the market still requiring, from one shape or another, SSDs with a higher durability rating? Let's talk about it more in the comments. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.